Hey folks, isn't working with data fascinating? Today we're going to unravel a data mystery by working on a Power BI end-to-end project of analyzing the employee attrition rate. And as an HR analyst, you will be uncovering some deep insights as to why employees are leaving so soon. So let's dive deep into it. Employee attrition is the gradual reduction in the company's workforce due to employees leaving voluntary or involuntary. It is often measured as a rate and can be assigned from resignations, terminations, retirements, or even layoffs. So, that is what employee attrition means. Key performance indicators or KPIs are basically the conclusions that you derive from your data after completing an analysis. That will help you to show as to how well the company is doing in achieving their business objectives. In this employee attrition dashboard, we'll be exploring KPIs such as total employee count, employee churn rate, the average employee rating, departmental distribution, and much more. These metrics are very much necessary to understand the workforce dynamics and the organizational health. By the end of this project, you will have a strong HR analytics dashboard to showcase into your portfolio, highlighting your data visualization and your business intelligence skills. So, in the end, that is how our dashboard will look like. And you can obviously see that it is dynamic in nature. And you can also see that we have added some dynamic filters like the rating filter and the effective date filter. Effective date is nothing but the date at which certain actions were performed on employees. And you can see that the overall employee churn rate is 28%, which basically means that 28% of the employees have left the company. And there is an average employee rating which is 3.1%. And the total employees that are currently working are 1,562 employees that are currently working. Now, if you have to show that it is dynamic in nature, what you can do is, for example, I go to the employee distribution chart. Now, I want to see that how many people are working in the HR department, or maybe what is the gender distribution in HR department. So, what we can do is, for example, if I click here, you can see now that every visualization has been highly impacted by just that one selection. You can see here that female here are 10% and male here are approximately 9.92%. You can also see that total employees in the HR department are 326. The churn rate is 30% and the average employee rating is 3. And you can also see that the monthly distribution of actions that were performed on employees in the HR department was around 138. So that these kind of metrics are very much essential to understand. So that is how the dashboard is dynamic in nature. And for example, I want to see the rating in the research and development field. So of course, if you hover onto it, you can easily see that the department name is research and development and the employee rating is 3.14. But again, here also the metrics changes. Every visualization has been highly impacted by a single click or by selecting one visualization. So everything is dependent on one another here. So this is the final dashboard that we'll be making. Now let's see how we'll be creating this dynamic and attractive dashboard. Before we move on to the first step of how to create an interactive dashboard, we should first understand that how basically the Power BI desktop looks like or what are its components, and then we can carry forward with multiple steps like data importing, data transformation, and moreover data modeling and further steps again. So if you see here, you can see that there is a report view. A report view is basically where you'll be creating your reports. This is a table view where the data that you have finally loaded onto the Power BI, it will be visible here, the tables that you've loaded. And data model view is basically where you will be creating multiple meaningful relationships among different kind of tables. So when we go back to the report view, here you can find that here is a home tab. Now home tab is essential as it allows you to get data from multiple sources. Moreover, it can also allow you to transform data and it will open a Power Query editor when we do that. Here is the insert tab where you can insert multiple shapes, images and pictures. There is a modeling tab, there's a view tab. A view tab here, if you see here, the page view. You can find the canvas that you will be making your report on can be fitted into various dimensions. Like this is fit to page currently. You can do it fit to width, and then you can also do it actual size also. So that is, now we'll move it back to page only. So now what we are going to do is, the first crucial step in creating this dashboard would be importing the data. You have to, transport data from multiple sources to this Power Query, and how you are going to do that, let me show you. You will click on Get Data in the Home tab, and you will click on Text or CSV, because we are transporting data from a text or CSV file. It can also happen later on that you can transport or import data from various sources like SQL databases and Snowflake also. But for now, we are going to deal with text or CSV file. So now what we are going to do is, when you click on documents, there's a data set. I have made a folder, and these three tables are the tables that we will be importing. So we'll just click on employee table, and we'll click on open. There will be a preview loaded soon enough where you can see how your data would actually look like, having multiple fields also. See, you can see here that there is employee ID, employee name, the engagement date. So you'll just simply load the data. You can transform it, you can clean it first, and then you can load. But for now, we'll just simply load the data. We'll load all the tables, and then we'll carry forward with cleaning of our data. We click on load now. You have to wait for a while, because the data can always be a lot more as expected, and then it can usually take time to connect to Power BI. There are a lot of records and rows that you have to deal with, so you have to wait for a while. So now the rows have been loaded. There you can see here it is around 1500 rows that we are going to deal with. Now again, you can transport another two tables in the similar way. You will click on Get Data, you will click on Text or CSV. It will open the folder where this is present in the datasets folder, and then you can also transport performance and action table. So you'll import the performance table now, and you'll click on Open. As soon as this opens, you will get a preview of it, and now we'll just load the data first. So now it has been successfully loaded. Now we'll click on Get Data, Text or CSV, then the action table. Again, we'll get a preview, we'll just load it first. So now what will happen is, you can see here in the data pane that all three tables have been successfully loaded. The action table, there is employee table, and there is performance table. So what you'll do next is, you'll go to the table view to have once a preview of how the data is actually looking like. So you can see here, these are the fields of the action table, and similarly these are the fields of employee table, and these are the fields of performance table. Now you'll go back to the report view, and you'll click on the transform data from here. So you can click on transform data here. And now what would happen is, now Power Query editor has been opened in Power BI. So Power Query is a very powerful tool in Power BI which can help us to transform our data to perform more efficient analysis later on. What it can do is, it can perform data integration, it can connect data from multiple sources also, and it can clean your data very efficiently. So we will be seeing how we can clean our data now. Now what happened is, this is the Power Query editor. See, you can see here, I'll show you. This is the transform tab where you can replace values, you can unpivot columns. There's so much to do here right now. You can add also your columns. For example, you want to create a custom column of your own, putting some formulas, and you can create that also. For now, we'll go to the home tab, and now we'll perform some data cleaning on our first table, which is the employee table. What I'll do here, I'll first change the name here. I will write it as employee table. Now what happened is, for example, now I have to rename a column. What I'll do is, I'll select a field. For example, I want to select employee ID, and I want to change its name to more elaborate, like employee ID, like full of it. So what I'll do is, I'll just double click on it, and I'll write employee ID. So this will give me the full name. Now engagement date. Engagement date basically is when the employee joined the company. So you'll just write it as, we can write it as employee join date. I think it will look much better. Sorry. So now this has also been done. Term date is the basically termination date. Termination date is when did the employee left the company. So department ID is fine, gender ID is fine, race ID. There's managerial ID, manager under which manager the employee ID has been working. The employee's date of birth, their pay rate, their level. Level is basically the position they are currently working on. So what we can do is we can delete the pay rate and the level because these are not very much significant in our analysis. What we'll do is we'll click here, we'll hold the control key on our keyboard to select another field and like this, and what we'll do is we'll just right click and we'll click remove columns because we don't need this. So you can see here that the columns have been removed. Whatever data transformation or data cleaning steps you will be doing, here it will be easily shown, the applied steps, the promoted headers or the renamed columns, whatever you will be doing. We can also remove the race ID because that is also not relevant to us. We'll remove this. There can be managerial and department ID and all that, but yes, for now, okay. So you can see here the employee name has been separated by a comma. Now the comma doesn't make sense very much in the first name and the last name. I mean, a space would be fine, but the comma, usually when we write our name, there is no such relevance of using a comma. So what we'll do is we'll split this column into first name and last name, and then we'll merge the column with a space. What we'll do is we'll click on this field, and then we'll either you can right click and split column from here, or you can just go to the home tab and click split column from here. Now it will ask you like on what basis do we want to split this column, by a delimiter, by a number of characters. So we want it by a delimiter because right now the delimiter here is a comma. So we'll just select this, and now it will ask us to select or enter the delimiter that we are wanting. So we'll just use a comma because we want a comma from it to be separated. So we'll just click OK. You can see here from the comma it has been separated into first name and last name. Now what you can do is you can merge these two columns into a single column, employee full name, by just click this one, and you can click hold the control key again, and you can select employee name too. And what you can do is you can right click and then you can click on merge columns, or either you can go to the transform tab, the merge columns, and you can click here. They are asking for a separator, so what you'll do is we'll choose a space separator. You can also choose other options like comma, equal sign, semicolon, but of course in a name space is much more makes sense. So we'll change our new column name to employee name. So now you can see it looks much more appropriate to the data. Now what we can do here is now we'll look at the data types of these fields. For example, here employee ID is in a number format. We could also possibly change it to another. You can see decimal, fixed decimal, but it's an employee ID, so it doesn't make sense to use a decimal, right? So we'll just keep it that way only. Employee name, you can see here, is in a text format, which is appropriate. Employee join date, again, it's in a date format, and it is very much essential that whenever we'll be using date formats in our data, so it should always have a date data type only. So termination date is also in that format. Again, department ID is in a number format. Gender ID is in a number format, which is appropriate. Managerial ID is also right. Date of birth is also in a date format, you can see here. What we are lacking here is the department name. We would want to know that what employee is working under which department. I mean, here it is visible that employee 3 is basically working under 10th department ID. Now we don't know what is the 10th department ID. So what we can do is we can tailor the data according to our needs. What I'll do here, first I'll change the data type of this to text. For example, if there is an 8 department ID, right? For example, let us assume that 8 department ID is sales. So I have to first change its column data type into a text data type, and then I can replace values. For example, I'll show you. First, let me change its name. Let me write it as department name. And now what you can do is you click on the field, you click on replace values right after right clicking. And what you do, for example, I want to find a value 1. Let us assume I can replace it with HR. So I'll click on OK here. So you can see, okay, there is HR 0. I think I've written wrong maybe. Uh, HR 0, HR. So you can see that everywhere, whenever there was a department ID as 1, it changed into HR because first we manipulated its data type. We changed it into a text data type because we want a department name rather than a department ID. So we changed it, and now we'll change it for each and every department ID that was before. Now you right click on the field again, you'll click on replace values. You have to find 2. Now we can basically replace it with finance. Similarly, we should do it for all department IDs manually because that is the only choice we are having. Marketing. For the 4th department ID, you can replace it with IT. For the 5th department ID, you can replace it with, sales. For the 6th department ID, you can replace it with the quality assurance. And for the 7th, you can replace it with the operations. For the 8th, you can replace it with the research and development. We can just make a short form. Research and dev. And for the 9, approximately there are 10 department IDs, so we have to do each of them. Customer service. And for the 10th one, you can replace it with, let's say, housekeeping. So now we have changed or basically manipulated the department IDs to department name by changing its data type. So here again, gender ID also doesn't make sense. We don't know what employee ID is what gender. For example, if employee ID 2 has a gender ID 1, what does that mean? The data is not clear here. So what we can do is first we can double click here and we can change gender ID, just simple gender, we can keep it. And what we can do is we can right click, we can click on replace values. And for example, we can keep 1 as a female. Okay, there is an error. Why? Because the gender ID was first earlier in the number format and we are trying to enter a text value. So what we'll do is we'll click here on this 1, 2, 3 and first we'll change its data type to text. And then we'll click right click, replace values. We have to find one value and we can replace it with what? Female. And again, right click, replace values. Value to find, replace with what? Male. So now you can see there is a significant change in the data, right? Managerial ID, we can just keep it and date of birth. So with this, we come to the end of completing data transformation in the employee table. Now we have to subsequently do this in the other 2 tables also. What happens is sometimes in the data there are null values and there are also duplicates or blank rows. So in order to, for example, I'll show you. Here termination date has also null values, but these actually make sense. For example, it is not necessary that every employee left the company, right? For example, Simpson here had a join date of 1st January, but again its termination date is null, which basically means that he is currently working here. So there should be a null value, right? And here Nash was started working on 1 January, but his termination date was on 29th May, right? So it means that he actually left the company. So here null values basically make some sense. In other tables, sometimes it wouldn't make sense. That is when you should remove those. So what I'll do is here now, you can select the whole table by holding Control plus A key on the keyboard, and then you can move to the Home tab, and you can just remove rows here. Click here, and either you can remove duplicates, and I will also remove any blank rows. There are possibly 1500 rows, so I can't just scroll every time. So what I'll do is I'll select the whole table and I'll just remove if there are any duplicates and blank rows, because we need to make sure that the employee ID is not duplicate. There is a unique value. So anything else? I think errors, if there are, you can also do that, but I don't think there are. So but okay, I'll still write it as that. So with this, I feel we have completed the data transformation in the employee table. Now we'll do this for the performance table. First, I'll change its name because I don't like the name. It's not very elaborative. Performance table. Now here, performance ID. Performance ID is the unique ID which is given to each employee on the basis of how they perform. So let me just rename it. Let me make it to a full form performance ID. We'll change it to the full name. We need the full name. Employee ID, employee rating. Employee rating is nothing but the rating that was given to each employee on the basis of their performance, right? And this is the performance date or the performance evaluation date where they were given the following ratings. Performance evaluation date. And you can see here the data types are absolutely correct. Performance ID should be in the number, employee ID should be in the number format, rating is also in the number format, and evaluation. What we can do is we can change here, but there is no need, but again, it is the same thing. So I will just move it from here only. So with this, we have completed the data cleaning portion here. Also, what you can do is again, you can hold the Control A key. You can remove if there are any duplicates that might be here, and you can also remove any blank rows if there are any present, and if any errors also. So what you'll do is now you move to the next table. Now what you will do is you'll change the name again here. Action table. And this is the action ID, that is the action that was taken on a particular employee by the HR. This is the type of action ID. Wait, let me just rename it, because again there might be a confusion between the action ID and the act ID. This is the employee ID. Let us rename this because we have renamed this in another also. And effective date is basically the date at which certain action was taken on a particular employee. So what we will do now is, here the action type again, employee ID 1 was performed an action of action type 10. Now we don't know what action was performed on employee 1. It shows here that the action type was 10. Now what is action type 10? We are not aware of what an action type 10 could possibly be. So again, now we will tailor the data according to our needs. What we'll do is, we'll click here, we'll change it into the text format. Now right click, replace values, and whenever there is, for example, here we have to find the value 10 and we can replace it with a hiring. So these employees, so all these employees IDs were hired. We replaced 10 with hiring. So again, we can right click, we can click on replace values. There is also another action ID, type of action ID, which is 90. And now we can replace it with, for example, we can keep it as promotion. There is also one another action type, that is 91 ID, and we can replace it with termination. These are the employees which were terminated from the company. There is one of the action type IDs which was 30, and you can replace it with training and seminar. So now again the data has been successfully transformed according to our needs. And what you can do is, finally you can just click on close and apply, because now we have completed with the data transformation, and we will just close this window, close and apply. And you have to wait, because again it is being, it is creating a connection with the model, and There is the cleaned data is being loaded into the table view also. So now you can see here, I'll show you. When you move to the table view here, you can see now there is a significant change in the each and every field. It looks much more neat. There's the employee join date. See, you can see the employee names look much more appealing and all. And action table also is now being, it has been tailored completely. So with this, we come to the end of the data transformation part. Now what we will do is we will perform data modeling. Now what is data modeling? Data modeling is basically creating relationships among tables or some meaningful relationships to derive some effective analysis or some very much powerful insights from the data. So what we can do here is, you can see here that the Power BI is so smart that it managed to make relationships on its own, based on a common field. Like I'll show you. Here, the relationship between employee table and the performance table has been created with the help of a common field called employee ID. And similarly, here relationship between employee table and action table has been created with a common field, which is the employee ID again. So that is how data modeling works. It is very much essential that modeling can happen so that you can create more effective analysis. For example, if I want to check from the employee table that what gender had which performance rate employee rating, which gender got the which employee rating, or what was its performance evaluation date, we can easily find out, because again there is a relationship between the two tables with the help of an employee ID. So what we will do is, with this we come to the end of the data modeling portion, and now we will go back to the report view. And now this is where we'll be creating our report and the dashboard, so that it can be effective in delivering some good insights to us. And that is how we'll be delivering it to you. Now we will be moving on to our report, or how to create an interactive dynamic dashboard. So now what we are going to do is, first, this is the canvas that we are seeing, right? This is a white screen. So we want some colors, we want some interactive visuals. So what we are going to do is, we're going to the visualizations pane, and we'll click on this, and we will go into the canvas background, because we want our canvas to look good, right? So we want, now we will be using a blue color theme, basically a blue palette. So what we are going to do is, we'll just click on more colors, and then we'll go to something much, I think I'll choose personally blue. Or you can even write the code of the color. If, for example, if you have a certain color code in your mind, you can just ask AI to what color code you would want. For example, I will write here a color code as 062 C37. Okay. And now what can I do is, and I'll just click here, and what I'll do is, I want its transparency to be less. I want it to be seen. So what will I do is, I'll just reduce its transparency. So basically this is the color that we are going to use. So we can just go to the view, and I don't like the width of the page, like its orientation. So what I can do is, I can put it as fit to width. So yes, now I think, or maybe I could just go back to the fit to page only. Fit to width. Okay. Yes. So what we are going to do is, now we are going to start with making some interactive charts and visualizations. For example, my first visualization would be basically monthly distributions of actions performed on employees. Now, what does this mean is, basically is like what actions were performed on employees, like how many count of employees were performed action upon by their HRs, and in which month. So let us see. For this, we'll be using an area chart. So I'll just select an area chart from here, and you can see that now an area chart has been on the canvas. So we'll just drag it here, because I want it to be at the bottom initially. So what we'll do is, from here we can choose, for the x-axis, basically we can go to the effective date of the action table, because I want to find out in which basically in which month actions were taken upon, and on how many employees. So there's a date hierarchy, you'll see, because effective date is a date type field that we're going to deal with. So we can just remove the year from here. We need it month wise. We need the monthly distribution, right? So we can keep the month here. And now from the employee table, we can take out the count of employee ID. So what we can do is we'll drag it here in the y-axis. So you can just see here once, count of employee ID. So let me just zoom it here once. See, okay. I think employee ID. Okay. So actually on the y-axis, I put the wrong field. It was the action count of actions that were, count of actions that basically happened on each employee in each month. So what we can see here is that in January there were highest actions were taken by the HR in January month, and subsequently in February, if you hover on the visualization, you can see that 113 actions were taken in February on some of the employees. Similarly, in March, there were around 145 actions that were taken. Now, the action type could be anything. It could be either an employee was 145 employees were hired, or maybe they were promoted or they were terminated. We don't know what exactly is, but for now, we can see that basically these many actions were taken on some of the employees in the subsequent months. So we can just see this. Now, if we want to, currently this is not looking very nice to the canvas, right? So what we can do is we can just change it a bit. Let me just reduce its size first, because, okay. So what we can do is we can go here to the palette. Now we can, either there are visuals for the x-axis, y-axis, and manipulating the color of the line and fitting their width and all of that is there. First, we will go with the background. We need the chart's background to match with the canvas background. So what we will do, we will go to the effects. Now we will choose a background. Currently this is white. We want something darker. So we will take this only. But what we will do is we're going to increase its transparency a little. Let me just, okay. Or maybe we could do with a lighter color also. Let me see. I think a bit dark. Okay. But again, here the x-axis and y-axis is not visible. There are multiple grid lines that are not looking good. We can just switch off the grid lines from the visual part of this group, and we can just switch it off. And what we can do is we will go in the x-axis. We will make sure that our values are visible. So we will click on white here. We need the white color to be visible, right? And we can just increase its size, and what we can do is Sejo UI is you can choose the font in which you want your x-axis values to be. Either you can go with Sejo UI bold. That is completely your choice. Yeah. And what we can do is now, again, the y-axis is also not very much visible. We can change it accordingly. We will go to the values section because we want its values to be visible, right? So we can click here and we can choose a white color for those. And you can again increase the font size. You can choose the appropriate font that you want. So, and again, the title is also not visible. We are not getting what basically this chart is trying to say to us. So we can go to the general section. We can click on title and we can type as monthly distribution of actions performed on employees. And again, this is not visible. So first of all, we will change its font. We want its font to be seen. We will change the color also. So yes, now it is visible and it actually, demonstrates something. The chart actually says something to us. What we can do is we can align it also. We can center align it. You can right align it, whatever you want. But for now, we will keep it as centrally aligned, and we'll just increase because we want a bit more visible view of this. Okay. So what you can do is, again, you can also use data labels and markers to effectively visualize. For example, in the visual section, you will find here data labels. So you can click here, you can switch it on. What you can do is the value is already on. So what you can do is you can change it to back to white, and you see now these are visible. But again, you can increase the size if you want. We will keep it as much smaller because again we don't want a lot of cluttering in it. And we can also put in markers because they look good enough. What we can do is markers, show for all categories. Yes. Now I think it looks good. Now it is much more appealing. Now what you can do is you can go to the visual section. You can choose a line color. We can have a contrast also. It is not necessary that we want all blue of it. We can have a dark blue and light blue. We can choose different color contrast. You will go into the line section in the visual group, and then you can choose a color for the line. I want something darker. I will prefer something darker here. Okay. Because now the shade area is also being manipulated with the same line color. We can change it. We don't want to match the line color. We want something different. So we will go with something a bit light. Okay. Now this is something you can choose, or maybe we can go with another shade also. We can have something a little darker for this. Okay. I think now this looks good. So you can see that basically this visualization is trying to say that how many count of actions were performed in each month in among the employees. So that is something this visualization is trying to say. And what you can do is you can add other effects also. You can add shadows also. For example, if you want a border, you can add a border. If you want a shadow, you can add a shadow. Like I would want something a blue shadow kind of thing, I can say. Okay. And you can also add border, like I'll just add a border also. Effects, you'll go to the border section, you'll switch it on, and you'll make sure that it matches the color also. And we want rounded corners also in the section. What we can do is that. So now I think it looks much better. And what you can do is again, you can work with the shadows also. I want its shadow to be a big offset. Okay. We can choose it as black only. It needs to be visible. We have to make sure. Okay, so now it looks much better. Now we can move on to another visualization. Now we are going to make another visualization, which is the employee distribution in each department. We have to find out that how many employees are working in each department. For example, number of employees are working in another department. So for that, you're going to create a bar chart. Now what you'll do is you will select a bar chart from here. Oh wait, let me just see once. No, I think we'll choose a column chart because a column chart looks much more better for this. We'll just choose a column chart here right now. And we will just drag it here. I think I want its size to be a bit small because later on we'll be having around a lot of visualization. So what we can do is, now this is the thing that we are having. Now I want to find out employee distribution in each department. So what I can do is I will select the chart here. I will make sure the department names come into the x-axis and employee distribution, how many employees are working. So I will drag this employee ID from the employee table and pull it into the y-axis. And you can see here that if you hover on it, you can see that HR, in the department HR, there are around 326 employees working. Quality assurance 170. As soon as you move forward, you can see that customer service is having only 139. There could be some potential reasons why employees are being less there. Why employees are leaving from customer service or maybe housekeeping or other departments also. So what we can do is, if you see there is a big difference, 170, then there's 162. So whenever you'll hover on it, you'll actually find it. Now what I'll personally suggest is either you can save time by just simply clicking here, clicking on the home tab, going to the format painter, and just you can double click and see. You don't manually need every time to change every visualizations, each components. But I will suggest here is that you add some contrast here. So for that you can actually change column colors. So what you'll do is you'll go to the format your visual part here, and you can click on column section, and they are asking if you want to apply settings to all, like the color you want to apply settings to all. No, I don't want it. I want it for HR only. So I'll select HR and I'll choose a color for it. So now we're going to take colors from a color palette that I have found. can do is you can just simply go to this website and you can select here. It will copy the color code also from here. And if I want more colors, I will remove this and I will type this. So you can see that there's a significant color difference also. Now, for example, now I want it for quality assurance and I want this color. Again, copy the color code and you can just put it in here. You can just paste the color code here. You see there is a contrast now. It looks better. It looks eye-catching. So you can keep doing that for each department. Quality assurance, IT, you have copied the color, right? So you can see that there is a contrast. It is looking much better also. Now for IT, for marketing, I want this color. For marketing, and I will just go on more colors. And see, there's a contrast. It is looking much more better. For another department, I could choose this. Marketing is done. Now we can move forward with research and development, and we can choose colors like, you see now it is looking very much beautiful than what we have expected. We can again copy it for another, and we can now we want sales. So we'll change the color to sales for different palette levels. So again, so this is how it's going to look. You'll be working with different colors. There should be a balance between color themes also that you're going to choose. I think I should undo it because I wanted to change the color of the finance, but it changed of the sales. So let me just undo this one. Okay. Category sales, and maybe I could just, I want this color. Sales color is different. We want different color. Oh, I think it is the same color. 90F. We could choose this color and go back to that, and we can again copy paste the color code. Yes, now it looks fine. Now for different department, we can choose finance. We'll go back to this. We'll choose this. We'll paste it here. Color. We can paste the color also. Yes. And now we can again go like this. And you can, it is not necessary that you have to work with the blue color palette theme. But now we are using blue color palette theme because we want it. Operations. For operations, we can choose this also. And for finance, I think we want a much darker color. It is kind of working the same only. Yes. Now, and finally, for customer service, if you want to change, you could also change it for customer service. For example, I'll be going back here and I want the lightest shade of blue. And I'll go back here and I'll write customer service and I'll choose a color and I'll click on more colors. I will paste it and see, now it's done. Do you think now it looks much more inviting and much more beautiful than what we have expected? Now, if you hover onto it, you can finally see that okay, the department name is HR and there is the count of employee ID. What I'll suggest is you could also do it like see, the X and Y axis titles should always mostly be present. So what I suggest is you go back to this one visualization and you can turn off the title also, and you can just switch it on because we could do it to white and increase its size because again it's not very much visible to it, and we could choose. So yes, now it is visible, and you could do the same. You could specify here also. See, department name we already know. We don't need that. We can show the title of y-axis because it is not very much understandable to us. So you can choose here. You can go white. You can, and I will prefer a Sejo UI bold font. Okay, now it looks better, right? So this is how we are going to do. Now I think I should lower it down because we are going to have another visualizations also, and this space also. We're just going to move this forward down here. Okay. Now another visualization we'll be working is the average performance rating in each year. Like what was the average performance rating that each employee had, in each year? What was the metrics that we are going to see? So we'll just go to a line chart. We'll choose a line chart from here, a line chart in the canvas. And what we can do is, what you I'll suggest is average performance rating. So we'll go in the performance table and we will click on the employee rating and we will put it in the y-axis. We want the average of employee rating, right? So we will just click here and you can have a minimum of employee rating. You can have a maximum, you can have an average. So I'll have an average only for now. And we want it by basically in each year what was their rating. So we'll put this performance evaluation date, and again there's a date hierarchy. We want it by year, so we will just cut this out. We will cut the quarter out. Okay. And as you can now see, if you see here, yes, see, so now if you hover onto it, you can see in 2015 average employee rating was 3, and in 2016 it increased by 0.3%. And this is how you can see the metrics here. If you just hover onto it, you can really get a good image of what the chart is also trying to say. So let me just put it here. I think I should reduce the size also. Just hold on, please. You can just reduce the size because we are going to have 6 visualizations and we want that each of it is visible to us. So yes. Okay. So what you can do is, again you can pull in the format painter. You don't need to do every visualization all by, there is no need to subsequently do it each and every wise. What you can do is you can click here, format painter, and you can just have the same idea. So okay, now this looks better, but the grid lines are not looking nice. What we can do is we can just switch off the grid lines also from here. These are off. We can also switch off the vertical ones. Now this chart looks much better. But what you can see is, if you want, you can hide the x-axis title, because again, the chart itself says that there is an employee rating by year. The x-axis, we know it's an year. The y-axis, we can it is very much visible that it is the rating only. So why do we need that? We can save a lot of space also for that. For example, y-axis, and you can just switch off the title. See, now it looks much more better. You can figure it out. Okay, oh, now it basically means that this is the rating only. So now you're done with another visualization. Moving on, we can find out the gender distribution of employee ID. Like how many employees basically belong are females or how many employees are male. What we can do is, we'll select a pie chart now and we can put it here. Just let me just lessen the size here. Okay. Okay. So what you can do is, first you need is the gender. So for pie charts, there are legends used, like is the male or a female. So what we'll do is we'll select the gender from here, we'll drag it into the legend, and we want how many employees are females or males. So we can basically figure out by the values. We can put employee ID in the section, and you can always have a count of employee ID that are female and count of employee IDs that are male. So again, see, you can clearly see that what this is trying to say. Now one thing you can do with legends is, you can go here and the legends are visible, but we don't want it in the center right position. We can always change their position. I want it in the bottom center. So see, now the pie chart looks much bigger, and the visuals are much more clearer. You can also change its labels in the visual section. For example, I just want the percent only, so I clicked on the percent of total. And what else you can do, I'll suggest is, again, you can do the same thing. Either you can click here, you can just format painter, and you can do the same thing here also. See, but again, it changed the legend from different positions. So again, you can just put it here in the bottom center. And what you can do is, the legends are not visible, the text is not visible. So you can just click here on the color. You can click on white. See, now it is much more visible. And the details table also are not that visible. So what we can do is, we will go in the value section. Yes. And we want it bold. So yes, now these are very much visible. Now what we can do is, also you need to lessen the title size also, because it is a lot more big than the chart is comparatively small. Okay, now this is much more fine, I'll say. Now another chart now that we're going to make is the employee distribution by the action type, which basically means that how many employees, count of employees that were hired, or how many employees that were promoted, terminated, and or how many employees went under the training and seminar part of it. So what we can do is, we can select a donut chart here, and we can put it in here. But okay, let me just hold on. Mm, okay, I can just compress its size. See, make sure the spacing is good, because again, we don't want too much of clutter also. So if I am making sure, I think you should too, because we don't want too much cluttering also. Okay, you can just lessen the size from here only. And I think now it looks good. Yes, you can reduce its size. So now what I will suggest is, see, now you want the action type by the count of employee ID. So we will just select this chart, and we will click on the action type. We want our legend as the action type, like different actions that were performed. And we want the employee on count of employees which went through different type of actions. Now what we can do is, first, all this, the title, the legends can always be, help with this only. We can always format paint it only. We don't need a lot of. Okay, so now it is very much visible, but again the contrast is not very much nice. So what we can do is, we can click here, we can go to the slices section, and I want the hiding to be in dark blue, let us say. So I will, okay, now it is looking nice. For promotion, I want a bit lighter tone. So yes, there is light. So for the next one, I want a bit much more lighter. I can do it for hiring, for termination, sorry. And for training and seminar, I want a much more lighter shade. So that is how you can see. You can see the contrast is now building. So you can also, what you can do is, you can see here that when you see here, action type was termination, and there were 1,562 employees, which basically means 25 employees were basically terminated from the company. There must be a reason as to why they were terminated, you know. And there's an action type called promotion, which is like 25% of employees were also basically, they were promoted also. So that is the metrics you can derive. What you can do is, you can, I think, we want the labels to be, what we can do is, we can have a data value. I think there is a fair share of people who have been, terminated, hired, and all that. Okay. So moving on, we have completed approximately 4 visualizations. Now what we can do is, we can make another visualization, which can always be average performance rating by each department. For that, we can make a bar chart, a clustered bar chart. So, or maybe we could also work with the stacked bar chart. I think the stacked bar chart would be much more appropriate in this case. So we'll just pull it down here. We want to see that which department had the best, had the highest average performance rating, like which department is doing so great, or which department is doing not so great, that as to why, employees are leaving, or what can be the reasons as to why there is a high attrition rate. So you can just, I think, okay, So now what we can do is we want the average performance rating in each department. So what I'll prefer is you can choose the department name, you can drag it into the y axis, and there is the we want the average performance rating, right? So we can choose the employee rating in the x axis. We don't want it sum, we want the average, right? So we can just click here, we want the average. And if you or either we could also go with the total employee rating in each department. For example, if you just choose sum also, for example, in the HR there were around the total employee rating was around 6228, but again it doesn't make sense. We want the decimal figure, so what we can do is we will just click on average. For now it doesn't show a significant difference, but when you just you just hover onto it, you'll find there are differences. For example, here in customer service, the average reading was 3, and it says there was 3.04. Then moving on to marketing, so there is a slight difference, but again, there is a difference. So, what we can do is we can just click here, we can, for the labels and all, we can always just format paint it, and we can do another settings also. But you see that the color contrast is already there, so we don't need to do much of the work. And the chart itself says a lot of, it gives an idea of what we are trying to achieve here. So again, you are done with the visualizations. Now there are important metrics that we need to calculate as to the count of employees, or maybe the churn rate. Basically, we want the churn rate. Now, what is churn rate in employee attrition analysis? It is that how many employees have left the company, and we'll make some cards now to show some good figures. So now you can choose here cards. I want a card here. Okay, I want a very small size, I don't need much bigger cards. And you can either just copy paste it, because we'll be making 3 cards. So, or you can just simply add more cards. You can add one more card, and you can just size should be similar. It all comes down to cleanliness in while creating the dashboards. If it doesn't look very much inviting, so, and it should be not just inviting, it should also be understandable to the stakeholders. What the data is basically trying to say, or what it is trying to signify. So you should also keep that in mind also. We need a little space. Mm, uh, or I think we can just reduce the size here only, because there's a lot more cards that we are going to. I think this size is much more better, because again we want it to be clean. We want it to look good. So okay. So now we'll be adding data into the cards. Now, for example, I want the total employees that are working currently in the organization. So what will I do is now I'll create a measure to count the employees. What you will do is you'll click on new measure. So measures are basically formulas which can help you to conduct a much more deeper analysis, to go further into the data, not just on the surfacing, but also create different measures also. For example, I want total employees. Total employees. I will create this measure. These are basically nothing but formulas that you can use to conduct much more deeper analysis. So I want total employees. So what we'll do is I'll use a count function, and I want the count of employees that are working currently. So I'll just click here, and you will get an so this measure has been created in the home table, which is the action table. But again, this should not be in the home table. This should be in the employee table. So we can change its destination to employee table. And we have to wait for a while. And you can see here that now here the measure that we created is now visible. So what we can do is, let me just click anywhere so that this so what we can do is we can choose a card first, then we can drag this measure into the field section and see. From here you found out that there are approximately 1562 employees which are currently working in the company. Or you could also do is you can go to here in the measures section, you can click on that particular measure. We want the format, we can have any format, we can have a format as whole number, we can have a percentage, but for now we want a count of the employees. So what we can do is we can just click on maybe okay, whole number sounds perfect. I think there is no problem with it. Now this is one of the measures. Again, now we want a churn rate. We want to calculate how many employees have left the company. For that, we will create another measure also now. We'll click on new measure from here and we have to wait again. So I will write terminated employees. Terminated employees. We have to find out how many employees have been terminated from the company, right? So what I will use a count rows function to count that how many employees they have been taken out from the company. So for that I'll use filter not is blank. From the employee table I'll filter. I will create a subset first. Filter employee table not is blank. I will explain you what this formula means, but for now you should just have a look at this. Not is blank. Employee. We want the termination date, and then we can click here and we have to make sure the brackets, all brackets are closed and there is no problem here. I think employee table. Okay, let me just have a look. Maybe what I'm writing might not be appropriate right now. So now we'll find out the terminated employees. Now in order to find, too many arguments were passed to count rows function, the maximum argument. Okay. The problem is I haven't put any bracket here. Here also there is one bracket. I think now it is fine. There should be 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Filter employee table, filter employee table. We will come back to this. For now, we don't need this. We will create this measure later on. We will find the churn rate. But for now, we can have another card. We can have the we can have the average rating that has been going on. So what you can do is you can select this card here, and you can just go in the employee rating section, which is in the performance table, and you can just drag this field. I don't want the sum of employee rating. I want the average employee rating that each employee has so far, gotten. So what can I do is I can also change it here. I want the call out value to be, I want it to be black. Okay, fine. Category label. Hold on. Okay. So now you can also do is you can switch off its title also, but we have the title. It is very much visible that we have the average of employee rating as 3.01. So this is the average that every employee has gotten. Now what you can do is you can also add some filters to this to make it look more appealing. So for example, I want filters. You can add slices also, but for now we'll work with slices. For example, I want to add rating into my slicer. So you can see here, this is in the between format from 1 to 5 it is shown. What we can do is we can go here, we can click on slices settings. I want it in a tile format. See, now this can be visible. If, for example, if you want a drop down will save you a lot of space. So you can use that also. But I will be using a tile section here only. And I can just minimize it. I can make it like this also. And I will just drag it here. I want it at the top. I think it's very much obvious that, we can small this. We can, okay. So now you can see that, okay, we got a slicer here, which is the rating slicer. And you can change its color, you can make it more look more better. So you can just go to the general part, you can click on effects. I want the background personally to be dark blue, or maybe or I could choose another color also. Maybe I just want darker color, or maybe I can choose from here also. So this also looks better. Now for the cards part, I can use this and I can go to the slice values. But I want this background also to be, there should be a contrast also. So I can choose this. You can choose this, you can choose different colors. There is no problem to it. See, this looks much better. And you can also change its call out values. For example, I want its values to be, I can choose them as much more darker color. I can go for bold and they should be visible. Yes. So now they look better, right? The rating, this looks better. This looks inviting also. Now what you can do is, we can also have a slicer of effective date. Okay. Now this is what we have clicked now, and what you can do is, you can just put it here because you want it to be neat. Yes. Now what you can do is, effective date was basically the date at which certain actions were taken upon the employees. So what you can do is, you can just pull it here from the action table and you can drag it here. And what you can do is, again, you can do that format painting thing. You can just click here and you can do this. But again, we could also see. But yes, now there's a difference. It is not that much visible as we expected. So you can just go back here and you can for example, slicer settings, you can go and slicer settings are fine. I feel the values are not visible, so you can just click here on the white section and see these are much more visible, right? And you can choose a background. No, we don't need a background for this. We want our slicer to be white in color, no, depict some, yes. Or we can also choose the color that we are currently using with other slices. Yes, so now this also looks better. What you can do is, with values, you can increase their size, yes, or you can just make them a bit small. You can put it into bold. We want it in bold. Again, the title is also not visible. The title is not being shown to us very. So you can just click here. See, now it's visible, but again, this doesn't look fine. What is if we can just type it in a much more better format? Effective date. Yes, and then we can click on Sejo UI, bold. Or maybe Sejo UI also works, but you can always choose different things. And see, now this looks much better. There's a significant difference now. It looks much more inviting also to us. Sorry. Yes. So now we are done with our visualizations, but now we are working on the cards currently. So this is the average of employees. What you can do is, you can change its background also, because the background doesn't look very good. You can change its background to much more. You can choose darker colors also, or maybe much more darker can be this also. But what you should keep in mind is, I'll tell you that you the data labels should also be visible, right? So you can pull this into white color. See, now it looks better. And we want it in the bold form, right? We are using the bold only. And the call out value should also be in a white color. It is not that visible to us. We could use Sejo. We should less this because we'll be inserting a picture also soon enough. Or maybe I could just do 20. Okay, 20 doesn't look very much. And so now let us check first how this card looks. Okay, so now it looks fine. So what you can do is you can just click here. You can format paint this. You can do this the same as I did. Okay, now it looks much better, right? And for the churn rate, we have to work on it. So what we are going to do is we are going to write that formula again. Okay, now coming back to calculating the employee churn rate, what we have to do is we have to find out the employees also which were terminated on a certain date. So for that, first we'll create a measure which is the we will name it as the number of terminated employees. So what we will do is according to their termination date, we will find out the number of employees that were terminated. So we will write it as terminated employees, and we will write something like we have to count the rows of the employees whose termination date is not null, means which basically means they already have left the company. So count rows, filter, it will filter from the subset of the employee table. Not is blank, and then we could also write it as employee table and termination date, and then we can close this, and now we will click on enter, and now it is working on that measure. Make sure the home table is in the employee table only, because again this is an aspect which is related to the employee table only, right? So we will just put it there only. So as soon as this measure is created, you will see, you can see here, this is the terminated employees. We have got that measure. So now we will create another new measure also, which is basically calculating the employee churn rate. So we'll do nothing, we'll just divide the terminated employees by the number of employees which are in the company. So what we will write is employee churn rate is equal to divide. You don't even have to type the whole thing, it will automatically show you um, total employees, and we will add a zero because we want to avoid the zero division error, right? So we can just create this measure now, and make sure again the home table is always in the employee table, because we don't want any, if it is in the action table there was an error also, so we've removed the error. It causes error like this. So what you can do is you can make sure that it is in the same table only. So once you're done with this, you will find here in see, you've gotten here, you've got the employee churn rate measure here. So what you'll do is you'll drag this here, employee churn rate, and make sure this is in the not in the general format but in a percentage format. We want it in a percentage format. So just make sure the decimal places are also to zero only. So see, now you can see that the employee churn rate is given, the average of employee is given to us. So all this looks very much inviting. Now what you can do is, if you want, you can add images also to these cards. That is completely up to you, but I will show you. You have to make sure you are in the insert tab, and you have to click image here, and you will just click on a star here, and what will happen is you will get a star, like I saved it. So I will just put it in the average of employee rating, because rating again can be associated with a star. So I'll use it here only. I'll just you know wait. This is actually very small only. I think it's not even visible also. So this is just to basically give you an idea of how images can also be transported. This can be the employee count logo. You can add anything. You can add images, whatever you like. I will put it here, but again the size. You have to make sure it is aligned also. Mine is not, but I'll prefer that you guys make sure that yours is aligned. Yes. So now you can see, you can add images. I think I can just put it more short. Yes, now it looks good. So you can add images also for much more clarity. We don't need symbol for churn rate. And you will be creating this, and what you can do is to show its dynamicity or in the filter. For example, it is actually visible here that in the HR department there are around 326 employees, but once you click on one visual, you will see that every other visual will be impacted. You can see in the gender distribution there are around 10% female and 9% male. So because of one visual, every other visual is being impacted. So that is how dynamicity is promoted here. If you want to unselect it, you can just click anywhere in the chart. And for customer service, I am seeing that the department and average employee rating is, for example, I want to put rating as my 2. Now, if my rating was 2, I can see that in 2015, 16, and 17, this was the employee rating, which was 2. And you can see the employees who got 2 rating. In HR, there were 306 employees, and maybe I didn't select it. For example, I want 1, or maybe I'm asking for 3. So there is a difference. You can see in HR, there is with a rating 3, in HR, there is a 3 rating. So that is how it is dynamic in nature. So if you want to clear selection, you can again click anywhere. Maybe you can click outwards in the canvas. Or maybe let me just clear the selection. Let me just unselect it because I think every visual is being impacted because of this. Yes, I think now it's fine. So this is how we are promoting the dynamicity in chart also. So this is the final chart that you will be making. Thanks for joining me through this journey of HR analytics and creating a powerful professional dashboard. If you liked the video, please click on the like button and subscribe to our channel. Also, hit the bell icon if you want further more updates. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.